at the U.S. Department of Energy. We're thrilled to have you with us here today as we're starting off the first of our quarterly webinar series for the waste reduction pilot. We have some great speakers here today. Clifton, I'll ask you just to advance to the next slide. So as we get started here, I wanted to thank you all for being here and wanted to let you know that we are recording this webinar today. So if you aren't able to make this webinar, if there's a future webinar for this waste reduction pilot that you're not able to make, know that they will be recorded and posted to our website for you to be able to listen to at a future time. So as you know, this is a new initiative, part of the Better Buildings and Better Plants initiative that we're piloting right now. We're up to 31 total partners. Since the last time we spoke at our kickoff call, we've had 2 new partners join, Sprint and Steelcase, which I'm very excited about. We have a waste pilot website that you see displayed there that has all the information about the folks participating in the pilot, and we went ahead and posted 3 presentations by some of our outstanding Better Plants partners, Bristol Myers Squibb, Flowers Food, and Volvo Trucks that they presented at a recent conference, the World Energy Engineering Congress, or the AWE World Conference last October. So they presented about their waste reduction initiative. So that might be an interesting information for you to learn more information about. So Clifton, next slide. What are we hoping to do today with these calls? A few things. We want to spotlight leadership. We want to share best practices. By agreeing to participate in this pilot, you all are stepping forward, and we want to help amplify your positions as the leaders in the field of waste reduction that others can learn from and that you can all learn from each other. So we're very excited today to have one of our waste reduction pilot participants speak and present and share their waste reduction story. Next up is to present valuable resources. We want you, by participating with the Department of Energy through this pilot, to understand the lay of the land and know what resources are at your fingertips, but because that will also help inform us about the proper role that the Department of Energy can play to develop further resources that may be of assistance to you. So I'm excited that one of our colleagues in the Advanced Manufacturing Office is going to present about this very new, exciting initiative that the Secretary just announced that may be of interest to you or some of your colleagues as well. And then lastly, we want to provide a forum to allow you guys to share challenges and opportunities with each other. Please talk about what you're seeing in your buildings and your plants, what challenges you're having, what you're excited about, any questions you have for each other. This is you guys are all part of a cohort that can learn from each other, and we want to provide a forum for you to do so. So with that, that's enough talking for me. I want to turn this over to our first speakers, and I will allow them to introduce themselves. But this is Tenderloin Neighborhood Development, and they really have a wonderful story, and it's been great getting to know them. So this is Ruchi Shah and Magdalena. Ruchi and Magda, I will turn this over to you and allow you to speak. One last thing before we get going. I think our goal for this, we're not trying to mute any of the participants on the call, but our goal is to allow the 3 presentations to go, and then we'll have a forum at the end for any questions. But should there be anything that was so pressing right now that you just want to catch them while it's fresh in their presentation, we're not muting you. But if you know you're going to be driving through a tunnel or having a neighbor that's going to be crunching up all sorts of stuff that's going to be loud next to you, just please mute your own phone. So with that, I will turn this over to Ruchi and Magdalena. Thank you guys so much for being a part of today.
Thank you, Eli. I appreciate the introduction and background. Hello, everyone. I'm Ruchi. I'm a Senior Sustainability Manager at TNDC. We are an affordable housing owner-developer based in San Francisco. And with me, I have my colleague, Magdalena Chimenska, she goes by Magda, and she's our waste data expert. So we are going to share our waste management approach. Keep in mind it's not perfect, but that's why I think we all are here to learn from each other and help make progress. Can you move to the next slide? So just want to share a bit more about TNDC. As I mentioned, we are a multifamily affordable housing owner and developer. We have 45 properties in Tenderloin. If you have ever been to San Francisco, I would encourage you to visit this very interesting and challenging neighborhood. We serve about 6,000 tenants. A good percent of that are formerly homeless population. We have a variety of population that we serve, including seniors, families, youth. So it's a mixed population. We also serve extremely low-income population. More than 80% actually our population makes less than $20,000 a year. So imagine surviving in San Francisco at that income. And with that come many challenges beyond sort of sustainability being on top of their mind. Also, we believe housing is a basic human right, but our work doesn't end there. We have rooftop gardens on our buildings and an urban agriculture program for tenants to get access to fresh produce. We also have on-site tenant staff and services to support them. Like I said, we want to move beyond housing. And then sustainability, so in the part as our mission, because we want the most efficient and affordable housing part of our.
Hello, sorry to interrupt, but this is Claire Lumkong, and it's become difficult to hear the presentation. I'm not sure if there's anything I could do with the phone.
Claire, for flagging that. I'm also getting feedback and would appreciate if people would mute. Hear me better, Claire?
No, actually, I could barely hear the question. I hope it's not just me. If it is, then perhaps somebody else could speak up.
Ruchi, it sounds a little bit like you're moving forward and away from the microphone. Maybe that's the issue.
Is this better?
Yeah, I'm not hearing either on my end.
I'm not either.
Is this better? Becca or Ela?
That's better, I think. I think that's a lot better.
Okay, great. So I'm going to jump to the next slide, but happy to sort of in Q&A talk more about who we are if there are questions. Sorry about the noise challenges. So sort of going back to the idea, as we are part of this pilot, I want to highlight why we are managing waste. At TNDC, if you look at sustainability and sort of utilities, we pay 100% for waste. So there is a clear split incentive here. Tenants are the waste users, but TNDC is paying for waste. There's a clear financial sort of motivation to definitely look at waste and think about how we manage it. We spend over $1.5 million, which was over our budget for 2019, $100,000 over our budget because of numerous challenges. So that motivated us to start strategically looking at waste. As part of Better Buildings Challenge, we have mostly focused on energy and water. Since 2019, waste has become a big priority for us. Also, it's driven by our regulatory obligations. In San Francisco, it is mandatory for multifamily buildings to have recycling and composting infrastructure in place, and we have to provide those services to tenants. And then, of course, sustainability. We want to be a part of solution for climate change reasons as well. And reputation. We are considered leaders in affordable housing in San Francisco and in sustainability, specifically on energy and water. And waste is something that we want to keep up as well. Let me go to the next slide. So as part of our framework, we decided we need to have a goal. Otherwise, we're not going to make progress. So our goal, it's a volumetric goal, 10-year time frame to increase diversion rate. And I'll talk a bit more about diversion rate, how we calculate that to 60% by 2028 with a baseline of right now, we're at 34%. So it's actually pretty aggressive compared to our energy and water goals as part of EPC, which is 20% reduction in 10 years. This is 26, so we are excited, but definitely looking to learn from you all as partners in this pilot. Can we go to the next slide? As part of our waste initiative, we are looking at a three-pronged approach. As I mentioned, across 45 buildings, waste infrastructure is critical. For us, we have buildings built in 1920s and rehabbed over time to our newest building in 2019. So there's a whole variety of infrastructure across our portfolio when it comes to waste management. The second big piece is data tracking and monitoring. Until unless we understand how we are being charged for waste, what are the incentives, what are the challenges, it's hard for us to look at initiative sort of and how to make progress. And then the third key piece is engagement. As I said, we pay for waste, but we are not the waste producers. Engagement plays a huge role because this is more of a human-focused approach. So those are sort of the three big areas that we are focusing on. Next slide, please. I want to talk a bit more on our first sort of prong, which is infrastructure. So in older buildings built in 1920s, recycling and composting was not even on our minds. So we only have one chute per floor as a landfill chute. So it's tremendously difficult to build infrastructure for recycling and compost. And if we don't have that, of course, we cannot expect tenants to recycle and compost and not making it easy enough for them. So we're still figuring out few options for the older buildings. We have been able to put bins in the second photo on the right. You can see we have squeezed some bins in the trash room, in the main trash room on the ground floor. That's, of course, not the best approach if you have to walk down 5 floors to recycle and compost. Can we have the next slide? So understanding these challenges, we are making progress with infrastructure on new buildings. So the photo on left is from our latest building built in 2019. We have decided to take a 3-chute approach. As in San Francisco, it's mandatory to have access to recycling and composting. Rather than having bins, we are taking a more streamlined approach. So per floor, every trash room has 3 chutes, which are marked appropriately. So our hope is we are making it easier and more accessible for tenants to do the right thing. On the right, the photo shows sort of a building not too old, but not that recent to take the featured approach. So in the existing trash rooms, we are playing around with what's the space availability and how can we put bins in a way that still tenants have access to streams on one floor. So there is a larger recycling bin per floor and sort of a smaller compost bin per floor. We have the next slide. Moving on to sort of data tracking and monitoring piece, which has been eye-opening for us as we embarked on this initiative, because in San Francisco, only have one waste vendor. It's a monopoly. We have to work with them. It's Recology. And previously, these bills were being auto-paid from our corporate office, and nobody was really taking a deep dive into what we are paying for, how is the billing structure. Um, Magda and I started looking at this as sort of our basis of data, and I want to share a few things which are sort of unique, maybe to San Francisco and affordable housing. With Recology, we have a volumetric subscription. This is for one property, where you can see in the top part, we have subscribed for trash, recycle, and compost. And the services are based on a whole lot of metrics around population type, how many units, etc. But really, the key thing here is to understand diversion rate, which is the basis of our goal too. Well, we are looking at diversion rate, which means the volume of recycle and compost divided by the total volume of all the three waste streams. So the more we have diversion rate, we get a diversion discount. This is an incentive for owners and developers here in San Francisco to increase their compost and recycling services. And there are a few caveats. We can only unlock sort of this diversion discount if we have a minimum diversion rate of 25%. So that's sort of also our target as we look at our portfolio to make sure every building is at this minimum level, even though this is way far off from where we want to be at a 60% diversion rate. This is a minimum benchmark. Also, with the new mandate, we are seeing a lot of audits happening at our sites by Recology and the city. So we are getting fines for contamination. Contamination is an extremely tricky issue because we get this bill on a monthly basis. So it's not a real-time situation. We don't know exactly on which day or which bins were contaminated. We just know that compost service was contaminated. That's why we are engaging with city and Recology a lot to better understand what's happening at our site. And we also use this now as an engagement tool, which we'll talk a bit later. We have the next slide. So I'm going to pass it on to my colleague Magda, and she'll, as a waste sort of expert, she's going to share a bit more on what we are doing every month with tracking and monitoring.
Hello all. So we've created our own spreadsheet to track our waste data. So on the screen we see a simplified version of it. So we are entering data here on the monthly basis, so together with the bill, and we are monitoring all three streams, so landfill, recycling, and compost. For each stream, we are monitoring how many gallons we produce, how much we pay for it. We also include cost for every extra pickup and contamination fee. Additionally, we monitor here diversion rate, which is very important for us because this is our goal is based on. And we would like to see how diversion rate is changing. And for our internal use, we also monitor how every property is doing versus the 25% discount diversion level. And additionally, we divided our entire portfolio into 4 groups: the family buildings, seniors, studios, and SRO, which stands for single room occupancy. It's important for the waste tracking because the different characteristics of population of building is presenting different challenges. For example, in SRO buildings, the units don't have their own kitchen. There is one common or shared kitchen per floor. So this is setting this setting is significantly affecting the volume of compost the building creates versus, for example, family buildings. From all this data, we are transferring to Energy Star Portfolio Manager only 2 numbers, which is gallons per stream and dollar amount. Please, next slide.
And Magda, I might just ask you to speak a little bit closer to the microphone.
Okay. Sorry for that. Is it better now?
Yeah, much.
Okay. So on the left, we see the screenshot of our Energy Star portfolio manager. For the first year ever, in addition to energy and water, we are tracking now our waste here. Our entire 2019 data is all in already. As I said, we enter number of gallons and total amount of dollar per stream. What is missing here from our perspective is the place or the option to add the diversion rate, which this is how we will be tracking our progress to our goal. And we also noticed that in ESPM we see the data in tons instead of gallons, but this is something we can work on further later. On the right, there is another novelty for DNDC. So we created the quarterly waste variance report. So every property is receiving this customized report to see the property diversion rate, also the average diversion rate for the building of the same kind, so family, studios, seniors, or SRO. There is also place to see if there was contamination, and if yes, how much does it cost us, and also how the bill, how much we paid the bill, and how does it compare to the plan budget, simply if we are within the budget or no. This is a new item for us. We are still working on it to present or to create the best form and to provide the best information and useful information to our site. Next slide. In addition to the quarterly variance reports, we also created this document with all the links, email address, and phone numbers that our staff can reach out to for help with waste management. We distributed this to all properties, so every site staff has easy access to it. We are closely cooperating with Recology, so our waste vendor, and also San Francisco Department of the Environment and its Zero Waste program. So these two organizations provide workshops and door-to-door knocking with training on proper recycling and composting. These activities are provided in the multiple languages, which is very important to our tenants, and at no additional cost to us or our property. Additionally, both organizations provide different signage in multiple languages, also multiple forms and sizes. And we're strongly encouraging our site staff to use these resources, like especially during monthly tenants meeting, to engage the tenants, to provide the newest information and updates, and to provide the feelings that our site staff is not on their own, that there are some resources they can use.
Just want to stress, as Magda mentioned, engagement both for staff and residents is a key to the success of our waste initiative. So it's a host of resources that we have developed ourselves, but also rely on external parties here in San Francisco to tag on those resources. We have the next slide. Sharing sort of some highlights from our resident engagement program. The photo here shows an old building. It's a senior building where they don't have space for recycle and compost bins on every floor, but it's the ground floor where we have set up compost for tenants. And surprisingly, seniors love composting, so they do make use of the space, and our site staff are engaging them. They have raffles and whatnot to make this a bit more fun. And we are also engaging our social service staff on site because they work with tenants all the time on financial needs and other assistance services. So they are our partners in sort of enforcing this and composting because again, they don't have access. They don't see the bills and they don't see the challenges. So until unless we communicate clearly with them on how it's impacting their building's budget, it's hard to sort of build that connection. We have the next slide. Just to sort of wrap up and share some of our successes, it's definitely a work in progress. We're really proud, as part of our initiative, we were able to bring up waste as a priority in the organization and with the management teams. As I mentioned earlier, we were laser focused on energy and water, but as also part of the BBC pilot, we are demonstrating our commitment to waste management. We are seeing so far, since we started this program in 2018, increased diversion at some sites, and that's definitely translating into cost savings, which is helping buildings budget. Also, Magda and I have learned a lot being engaged with different city agencies. This group too, we are hoping to learn more, which increases our knowledge and capacity to better manage initiatives. And then to demonstrate local leadership in affordable housing, tackling sustainability challenges, it's hard given the bandwidth and capacity, but because of our efforts, city agencies are looking up to us to share what we are doing and how other organizations can start managing waste better. And another success is our tracking system. As Magda mentioned, we are still figuring out what's the best system for us. We're looking at Energy Star Portfolio Manager for certain pieces. We're also having our in-house Excel-based system that our data analysts are working to automate that based on billing platform that we have. And going to challenges, infrastructure and costs are number one, because we can do so much given the current infrastructure of our buildings. It's a work in progress, and we need to be more creative to find better options for recycling and composting. Split incentives, as I mentioned earlier too, there is not a clear connection in who pays and who produces the waste. Population served, as you can imagine, and with homeless population, they do have mental issues, and we need to understand that waste is not number one priority for them. There are many other challenges that they deal with, so we need to factor those as we build our goals. And then billing and metrics. So with Recology, it's still a volumetric transaction. It actually really doesn't matter if the bins are empty or half full, because we are not paying based on that. We are paying based on what volume we are subscribed to, and it's not real time. So that's still a challenge. We are working with a vendor to pilot a few properties where we put sensors on our main yard larger bins to actually, are we using the capacity to list? How can we optimize service levels? So that's a pilot that we'll be working on this year to overcome, especially the bidding challenge and understand metrics better. So with that, I want to wrap up and happy to answer questions and also get recommendations. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Ruchi and Magda. That was really great, and we appreciate you starting us off with this. In the efforts of time, let's just keep moving. So Clifton, next slide. I'm very excited to turn this over to my colleague, Melissa Klimbara, who's leading an exciting new initiative on the innovation side of what the Department of Energy does, the Plastics Innovation Challenge. So Melissa, I will turn this over to you.
Yeah, and sorry for the date, a day in the near future. It's actually happening now, so it's actually February 2020. Anyway, so giving you a quick overview of the Plastics Innovation Challenge. I'm not sure how many folks on the phone are familiar with the recent announcement by DOE to do a lot of investments in plastics innovation, and what we mean by that is developing, covering the whole kind of supply chain, like collection and sorting technologies, trying to avoid plastics ending up in the oceans as well, and how can we, prevent those plastics from ending up in the ocean. How do we then, once we collect these plastics, create value propositions for recycling? Because right now a lot of plastics are mostly downcycled. If they are eventually recycled, a large percentage of plastics that are collected for recycle don't actually get recycled. So we're looking at new deconstruction technologies from biological and chemical pathways to depolymerize these plastics, and then how do we kind of repolymerize or upcycle them into higher value products that ultimately help improve the energy intensity and would encourage future recycling because you created a valuable end product. And so we're also looking at, how do you design products from the beginning for recyclability, or how do you also build in biodegradability or biomass-derived or bio-based polymers into recycled plastics or new plastics. And so ultimately what we're trying to do is develop this research so that the technologies get commercialized, and we're supporting a domestic plastic industry in the United States. What we want to do is basically keep the carbon in play. There's a lot of carbon that is wasted because it's ending up in the ocean, ending up in landfills. It's not being recycled to high-value products. And so how can we create this carbon that we're losing? How do we keep it in play for our manufacturers to keep using it in a way that improves the life cycle energy intensity and overall improves the environmental impact? So if you go to the next slide. So some of the types of work that we're doing under this broad Plastics Innovation Challenges, we recently just announced a notice of intent for a funding opportunity. It's actually being co-funded by the Advanced Manufacturing Office, AMO, and the Bioenergy Technology Office. I'm actually with the Advanced Manufacturing Office. I work with Eli, and so we're working in partnership with Bioenergy, and the topic areas would be in these kind of three kind of broad topic areas of how do you create highly recyclable or biodegradable plastics, how do you create novel methods for the deconstruction and upcycling that I talked about, and then we have an existing consortia led by our national labs, NREL, Oak Ridge, and Los Alamos, and we want to encourage industry, universities, and other national labs to collaborate with that existing consortia to tackle these challenges in plastic waste. When this funding opportunity is posted, it'll be posted to E-Area Exchange, where all of our funding opportunities are posted, so just keep your eyes peeled for that. We also recently had in December a workshop, 2-day workshop on the circular economy of plastics, which was really informative and is continuing to help inform the Advanced Manufacturing Office and the Bioenergy Technology Office and DOE in general on, where we need to be conducting research on plastics for the circular economy. Next slide. So I did mention already that we started a national lab consortium led by NREL, Los Alamos, and Oak Ridge. It also involves MIT, Montana State, and Colorado State University. So we have a website set up. If you want to learn more information, you can go to bottle.org. We are focusing on those kind of three main pillar areas of depolymerization, repolymerization, and design for recyclability and biodegradability. And so if you are interested in becoming a partner, there's no real, you can be part of the consortia and learn more about consortia and then form partnerships on projects in the future. It'd be great to have a lot more industry involved in this so that we're addressing the challenges as you see them. So we encourage you to go to that website and learn more about the bottle consortia. Next slide. So I already mentioned the FOA. That's coming out hopefully in a few weeks. That's going to be upwards of $25 million. Our office, AMO, is contributing more than half of that. We also have an SBIR topic in the area of novel utilization strategies for ocean plastic waste. So ocean plastic waste, because it may have other kind of contaminants, more salts on them and biophthalates on them, how do you do conversion of those ocean plastic waste into a high-value end product? So that's what that SBIR topic is focused on. So the letters of intent were due about a month ago, but we're pretty excited about a lot of the ideas that we got, and we look forward to evaluating the full application. We also have an existing large consortia called Remade that's led by Rochester Institute of Technology. So that is focused on a broader array of not just plastics, but also fiber, metals, et cetera. So Remade does have, since they do have a thrust area on plastics or polymers, they have a request for proposals that was recently posted. So if you want to learn more about that and joining Remade, you can go to the website there. We also have another institute called Rapid that's focused on process intensification, and they recently released a request for proposals as well. I believe it closed about a week or so ago, but they also had a topical area in plastics upcycling. So we're having a lot of complementary activities across the Advanced Manufacturing Office portfolio and two of our consortia, Remade and Rapid, with these new kind of more targeted investments through the Bottle National Lab Consortia and the Bottle FOA and the SBIR topic. So there's been upwards of, over $50 million, close to actually $70 million invested in the Plastics Innovation Challenge since it was announced. Next slide. So I mentioned that we already had this workshop in Plastics for the Circular Economy. We, AMO, have a lot of investments in composites recycling and how you can use additive manufacturing or like for polymer feedstocks, for secondary feedstocks to for additive manufacturing. So we had two technical tracks focused on that. The report from the workshop should be posted in the coming weeks. The link was shown earlier on an earlier slide. So if you're interested in learning more about the workshop through the report or seeing some of the presentations, that will be available shortly. We're also planning an industry roundtable on the Plastics Innovation Challenge, probably sometime in late March in Pittsburgh, where there's going to be an X-Lab event led by the National Energy Technology Lab. It's also Carnegie Mellon University's Energy Week. So we're still, thinking through that and putting that together to continue to communicate to a broader set of industry partners, national labs, universities, what the Department of Energy is doing in the Plastics Innovation Challenge, continue to get feedback on the direction that we're going in, and continue to build partnerships for, ideas for research that we do to be incorporated into existing consortia or future funding opportunity announcements. And I think that might be one of my last slides. Next slide, please. Yeah, so I already said all this. This is just, we can send these slides out later, but this is just a nice little summary slide of the type of work that we're doing at the Department of Energy so far. There's also an NSF EFRI solicitation out on the street for eliminating end-of-life plastics. We, DOE, aren't funding that, but that might also be of interest to some of the folks on the phone. So happy to answer any questions if time allows, but I think that is it for me.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Melissa. I know that for a lot of us in the in our space in the Department of Energy, it can feel like some of the technical assistance, Better Buildings, Better Plants partnerships exist in a parallel universe to a lot of the R&D and innovation, and hopefully through pilots like this and webinars like this, we can make it a little bit easier for people to build awareness and hopefully leverage the great work you guys are doing. So if anyone has any more questions or needs more information about how your company may get involved, or if you're sitting there being like, yeah, I'm not the R&D or an innovation person, but I know my colleagues are interested in this, we're happy to share Melissa's contact information and help get you better involved with the Bottle Challenge or any of the Remade or some of the other institutes or any of the other funding opportunities that the Department of Energy is investing on in this important space. So because we're trying to cram so much information into a short call and still leave a little bit of time for you guys to talk amongst yourselves, I want to turn quickly to my colleague Ethan with the next slide to just give a little bit of an update on the reporting forum that we've been working on. So Ethan, over to you.
Thank you, Eli. Hello, everyone. We can go to my next slide. So, of course, many of you are already involved in the Better Buildings, Better Plants program. You're familiar with the data collection forums we have. We wanted to create something new for the waste pilot study. I know that many of you are using EPA's Portfolio Manager, and if that is working for you with regard to the waste reduction pilot, feel free to continue using that. But if you are looking for a spreadsheet to collect information, we have created one, and it'll help us aggregate information at our end. There are 4 pages to this spreadsheet, and we'll be sending it out to everybody, I believe, later this month. We seem to have iteratively been working on it for a while, and we seem to have settled on a final format. But there'll be an instruction page, a reporting page, which is, of course, the key component of it, a energy recovery worksheet for those who are doing waste to energy conversion. There is a bit of a glossary on waste types and metrics, and then there's a sample that I've put together that hopefully will be instructive. So if you go to the next slide, this is a screenshot of the top half of the reporting form. And you'll see over in the top right the waste management hierarchy. Some of you may be familiar with this inverted pyramid, and the idea behind it is that at the most of your waste you address through reduction and reuse, and then you would do as much recycling and composting as you can. Energy recovery is an option for some folks. And, of course, the last option and the least amount of material that you want is to treat and dispose of, which we'd think of as sending to a landfill, if you will. And so I've got little arrows showing how that lines up with the different columns. And you can see that there's one for the baseline year, which would be whatever year you have chosen to be your baseline. It could be last year, it could be this year, it could be 10 years ago, whatever you've been working with, and then the reporting year, which of course would be the current year. And you'll also see toward the bottom some lines about waste diversion rates and waste intensity rates they'll talk about in a bit. I'll go ahead to the next slide. And this might be a little bit easier to see. There are some drop-down lists. You can generally tell where there's a drop-down list because the field is a light green. And so for the units that you use to track waste, you can do tons, pounds, cubic yards, cubic meters, and then different waste types, things like cardboard, paper, glass, metals, things like that. There's a drop-down list. You can select for each of those. If the field is light green, it has a drop-down list. If it's light brown, it auto-calculates, and so it'll total up. So that you can see that in that screenshot as well. In the next slide, we'll have the Energy Recovery tab. Some of you may be sending material to a municipal incinerator, and you can capture that information here. If you have on-site generation, such as a cogeneration or CHP facility, you can capture that information as well. Some people might actually have a wood burner, whether using wood to create in a burner furnace or something to create steam or something. So again, this is optional. If it helps you, great. If it's not applicable, don't worry about it. The last next screen is, as I mentioned, the waste types. In the left side, there's a list of about 3 or 4 dozen. You see the first handful there, and that's what feeds into the drop-down menu that I pointed out on the first one. And then on the next one, the next one over, you see the units, and again, that feeds the drop-down menu for that as well. You notice at the very bottom, there's the word other. And on both of these, the last lines say other. If you have a waste type or a unit that you'd like to feed into the drop-down menu, you can just type over the other with whatever your metric is or your waste type is, and it'll automatically feed into that drop-down menu. And that's it. If you have any questions, if you have trouble developing a waste intensity metric or something like that, Bruce and I and the TAMs and AMs are here to help you and look forward to working with you as you collect your data and report it in the months and years ahead. Thank you.
Unmuting myself. Wonderful, Ethan. Thank you so much. That was really well presented. So now we will open this up to everyone. You've done a wonderful job so far of muting your phones and taking in what was no doubt a lot of information from a lot of different sources. But now it's an open forum. Any questions for Ruchi, Magda, Ethan, Melissa, anyone who's presented so far? And then after we've moved from that, then we'll open it up to more of an open floor on what you're seeing in your own plants and buildings.
Hey, Eli, this is Tim Culp.
Wonderful. How are you doing, Tim?
I'm doing good. So the question that I have deals with waste reduction, when you have different categories, and so let's say it's plastic, what happens at the end use when, say, the consumer isn't very diligent and they're putting aluminum in with plastics, but the plant takes it and sends it back now to for recycling? Do they get a penalty from the recycler? Do they just get a verbal, lashing? What kind of happens with products that haven't really been sorted out properly at the plant level? So I guess it's really for the plant folks.
Does anyone on the call want to answer what they've seen in that case?
This is Hannah Debelius from DOE, and I'm not sure if this is precisely your question, but I'll say that from my experience, previous experience working in the higher ed space, when we would send recycling to a recycling facility that was rejected because of contamination, we would incur a fine from the recycling facility. Same with when we would send things to compost, and that for compost that could also result in no longer having the privilege to send things there. But I'm not sure if someone else has other input on that.
Hi, this is Ruchi. I just want to add, even though we're not a brand, in residential waste, it's similar to what Hannah said. Also, Recology, our vendor, when we send a recycle bin to them, they have their own sorting. So they would sort to an extent that their plant or facility can. If it's highly contaminated, they send it straight up to landfill. And of course, fines are occurring.
Thank you.
So I have actually a quick question for Ethan.
Mr. Nambakar, can you identify yourself? Go ahead, Sachin.
Okay. All right. So I think this hierarchy in the reporting form is actually great. And energy recovery, it's actually waste to energy. So that is covered. But in many cases, actually, in fact, all cases, whatever waste manufacturers are generating on site, when they actually reduce or reuse or whatever remanufacturing activities, recycling activities, so there are basically additional benefits upstream and downstream in their supply chain. Within the manufacturing facility itself, when they reduce their waste, a lot of energy and GHG emissions are reduced because of that waste reduction. Same thing with remanufacturing. So life cycle energy impacts point of view, life cycle GHG emissions point of view, there are upstream, downstream, there are so many possibilities. And definitely our approach, our form, we won't be able to capture that kind of impact. I just wanted to mention this so that all of us are aware of that.
Sure. I think we're looking at kind of what I would consider inside the fence benefits. But certainly, if somebody is aware of what is going on, what benefits are happening within their supply chain, we're interested in learning about that. Capturing that kind of information is difficult, and creating a forum for it even more so. But yes, there are some. It didn't show up in my screenshots, but there are some blanks later on in the pages where people can enter as much detail as they care to about the benefits that they're realizing from their activities.
Great.
This is Bruce Long. I had a quick question for Melissa. Wanted to get a sense from you, if you could share with the group here, for the bottle initiative, how big of a priority is this for DOE? And do you know if it's also possible to derive biofuels from plastics?
It is a big priority. So biofuels, so plastics are petroleum-based. And so if you're going to pyrolyze or gasify plastics, it's not going to count as a biofuel. So you could, though, it is happening now where you can make bio-based plastics, but the performance of those plastics doesn't have the same characteristics as petroleum-based. And so what we're trying to do is try to get the performance of bio-based plastics and to improved so that, for whatever the intended end use is, it actually serves that market and whatever the purpose is for that plastic use. But then also build in kind of potentially design for biodegradability, or even go kind of mixed, part biomass, part petroleum-based, so that you try to get the best performance advantages for the plastics for whatever the intended end use is, and then also see if you could design for the recyclability of that, kind of infinite recyclability, if that's even possible, of that product. But going from a petroleum-based plastic to a biofuel, you could, unless you go through like an organism through the CO2, it wouldn't really count.
Okay. Great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, with that, Clifton, I'll turn to the next slide, if there exists. So, and then, here I want to, we'll click into the next slide for a moment. I just want to make you aware, I'm sure you've seen the announcements, our annual summit is upcoming. It should be really great. I know that we have a lot of us here working really hard to bring in some really interesting speakers and to make it a really exciting event. We're going to have a dedicated panel session focused on waste reduction, and there should be a lot of other resources for water, waste, energy reduction when you're there. So I believe there's still space for the early bird discounted tickets, but if you haven't yet signed up to participate, I really would encourage you to. It's really going to be a great event. So We have about 4 minutes left, so Clifton, I'll ask you if it's possible to turn back to the previous slide. As long as we have a captive audience here, we'll open the floor and see if any. I recognize that opening the floor and asking people to share may be challenging, and we'll see how this works or if there's a better way to structure it for next time's webinar. But we'll at least open up the floor and see if anyone wanted to share anything on the biggest challenges you're facing or something you're excited about or ways the Department of Energy can continue to support your efforts. So in the remaining few minutes here, I wanted to leave the floor open for people to share.
Hey, Eli, this is...
Go ahead.
Yes, this is Bryce Marchevsky from General Motors, and the biggest challenge that we are facing now is the company is transitioning from one program called landfill free to what is called now zero waste, and the big difference is to not use waste to energy or incineration as a means of diversion. And I think this is also very exciting because it puts everybody outside their comfort zone. And one way that the DOE could support us with this is defining what zero waste means. We are aligning ourselves with the Zero Waste International Alliance definition for zero waste, and I would like to see your thoughts about, putting standards and guidelines together around zero waste.
Well, thank you for sharing that. That's really helpful for us. And I think as we've expressed before, one of the reasons that we decided to pilot in this direction was to hear from industry and hear from you and understand the proper role that the Department of Energy could play, and really, let your experiences allow us to define what leadership is. So I think you're absolutely correct that in what you're feeling is valid, and that hopefully that is an important role the Department of Energy could play in terms of helping to set a bar for itself as to what we're looking for waste reduction. But I made a note, and hopefully my colleagues did too, for the Zero Waste International Alliance to learn more about their resources and what they're asking folks to do, and hopefully we can work with them and see if there's an opportunity to align, if that makes sense. But hearing that there was someone else who wanted to speak, as you chimed in, I'll stop talking and give her the floor.
Hi, this is Ruchi again, and I feel I've done enough talking, but I have a question. I would love to understand from partners or from DOE if there is any guidance on mid-tech sort of technologies for sorting, or if people are trying out sorting companies, or any sensor-based technology. It's for residential waste. I'm looking to other building partners for feedback.
Ruchi, I'm not sure I caught your question. Could you just repeat it one more time? Or if my colleagues, if you did get it and you're able to respond, that works too.
This is Hannah. I think she was asking about if there are technologies for sorting. And I will say from my little corner of the world in DOE, I haven't seen that yet. But if any partners have, let us know. And also if any partners want to share that with us over email, it's also something we could, incorporate into a future conversation.
Thank you.
Well, with that, it's now 2:30 on the East Coast here, so I wanted to thank you all for joining this webinar. The next webinar, we're eyeing May for the next one of these, so if there's any feedback you had on this one, or if you are interested in being the featured presenter like Ruchi and Magda did this time, please let us know. But otherwise, thank you all so much for joining us today and for your interest in this topic, your leadership in the field, and we very much look forward to working with you moving forward. So thank you very much, and I will see you all at the Better Buildings, Better Plants Summit.
Thank you.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Eli.